Thanks for joining in part 2 of this sketchbook walkthrough video. If you did not see part 1, click the link so you can get caught up. Basically, I created my own sketchbook and I started showing about half of it. It's a very long video because I actually reveal a lot of secrets. I reveal a lot about my thought process and how I went about each drawing. So if you want to check it out, click the link. Also, before the end of this video, I'm going to drop a very special offer. I'm going to be taking on a small number of people to train them almost like Jedi Padawans in how to draw in the way that they want to draw. So they can see it, draw it. If you want to learn how to draw anything, I mean anything, you don't necessarily learn how to draw one thing and then I teach you how to draw another thing and then I teach you how to draw another thing like a lot of art classes. In this training, you will learn some very basic fundamentals that will help you be able to draw anything. It doesn't matter whether it's a ball, a cat, a tractor, a tarantula. It doesn't really matter. You'll be able to draw it in very short period of time with a ballpoint pen and no erasing. You will have the confidence to do that. So watch all the way through to the end of this video and then you will be able to partake in that offer. Now, let's jump in where we left off. Okay, so this is where we left off in this sketchbook. And I was talking about how I designed this whole page and designed really the composition of the page. A lot of pages in the sketchbook, I will do one page here, one page there. And this is typically how people do their sketchbook. You just you fill up one page and you fill up another page. But in this one, I decided to actually do the entire full spread, sort of like old school magazines where you would open up the full spread and do a full 2 pages and make it combined together. In this one, what I wanted is for kind of like a museum quality type image. I was thinking of a number of things. I was also thinking of some sci-fi imagery. This here is just really stream of consciousness. And I do this a lot of times when I'm drawing, figures and things like that. I will really just come up with ideas from old movies that I've seen, books that I've looked at, and just just make up stuff as I go along. So in this here, I'm thinking about some sort of character, some sci-fi character, maybe an ancient character. And then I'm also thinking about like some mummy strips, like, how mummies are wrapped up with the fabric or with the straps. I'm putting a little bit of straps around this character. And I'm also having fun with the energy of these lines. If we look really closely, here we can see how these lines are really organic lines. So a straight line be more like this, and then an organic line are lines that have, wiggles and waves in them. And in this one, I was really focused on that. And this is not necessarily how the figure's body look, how the model's body look, but I wanted to make it look like this. So I kind of gave all of this energy in the line work. And then also there are areas where you can actually see how the lines are darker and then they get lighter. And so that variation between dark and thick, that's called line weight. So you vary the line weight and it can make things look like it's closer to the camera and make some stuff push back a little bit further. So like this figure may feel like it's a little bit further in the back because there's these thicker lines here that bring this figure here forward a little bit. Now this figure is mostly forward because there's a lot of shadows and the smudges. I actually smudged the pen. I smudged the ink of the pen to achieve these shadows while I was drawing. Here's some more of the straps. And then I also drew my name in kind of a graffiti style fashion, tagging style fashion, as I used to tag back in the day, and then added this text in here. This drawing I really like because I remember this pose. This was like in 2013, but I still remember this pose. It was something about the way the figure posed, and I wanted to try to catch the energy of the movement of the pose. And I also wanted to capture this foot capture the depth, the push and pull of the foot. So the heel of the foot comes out towards us, and then the arch of the foot goes inward, and then the ball of the foot comes back out. So you have this push, pull, like this sort of energy here, and also the difference or the division between the ball of the foot. You have one area here and one area there, and then capturing the little toes in there. And you could also see in my lines, there's different areas where the energy starts to change. So like this is a little bit more smooth. Then it gets a little bit of rough here, a little bit of tension, a little bit of energetic lines here. And when I draw, I don't really try to make it one way or the other. I don't know what I'm going to do when I draw. I just put the pen on the page and I go for it. And this is the way I teach people to draw as well, because when you remove the thinking from drawing, you actually have more fun. And the more fun you have, the more you do it. The more you do it, the better you get. And then it just goes in a circle. So this figure here was probably on, again, the bus or the train. And I did not give them any any pupils in the eyes. So it has like this kind of comic book villain effect in the eyes here. And here's another mistake. I'm going to show you one of my mistakes. So typically the eyes are typically aligned with the top of the ear. So, and then the nose is aligned with the bottom of the ear. In those old school videos by, I believe it was Andrew Loomis or something like that, it was like old school drawing books, they would show you these types of alignments. I typically make this mistake. I used to make this mistake. Actually, I don't do it very much anymore, but back around 2013-ish, I would raise my ears up too high. And this was just like a mistake that I kept doing throughout a lot of my drawings. No matter how better I got in drawing, I still would make this mistake. And the reason I would make this mistake is because I don't teach people to measure. Don't do any measurements while you're drawing, because that's going to slow you down. So as you see, this ear is way up here. No one's ear is really up that high. So that's just a look into, some of my process and how I even made mistakes back then. But most people, when they look at this drawing, they would never see that mistake, right? They would just see the drawing and say, oh, okay, that looks pretty cool, right? But there's a huge mistake there. Plop. This is another, this was from a figure drawing session, and I just drew the figure 2 times on this page. Now, I'm going to keep this sideways so you can see the full figure, because if I turn it this way, then you won't really be able to see the full figure. But this was the same figure as this one here and the same figure as this one here. I just turned the page and did different drawings. But what I like most about this drawing is there's a bit of fiction to it. So if you look at the face, there's no nose. The eyes are super close together, kind of like a bumblebee or some sort of bug type energy with the face, as well as if you look at the fingers, they're very long, right? They're really stretched out. And then when you look at these toes, I really like the way I did these toes here. I really took the time to pronounce the articulation of the toes. So that's just a little example of how when I'm drawing, I don't really, try to follow any formula or try to make everything look perfect. Sometimes I may make a bug face, and it's because I'm into science fiction movies, action movies, and a lot of comic books and characters and things like that. So sometimes I do that with my art, like here, same thing here. I get bored with drawing the nude figure over and over, or sometimes I get bored with drawing people. I'll show you another video where I did a recent drawing session. It was a clothed figure drawing session where I actually drew the figure, and I put a Batman costume on the guy where he did not have a Batman costume. He was just posing, but I put a Batman costume on him. So in this background, I used gouache. And I just kind of just splashed on a little bit of gouache here. And again, I like things to look ancient. I like them to look old. So I tried to mimic the look of those old master drawings, even the color. These people are all on the train and probably waiting at the train station and the bus station. Notice the energy in the hair here, the very thick lines. We got thickness here, but then look at these really faint lines. This one you can't even barely see, right? That's really just playing around with the line weight, how hard I press on the paper at times and how I pull up on the paper. Same with this here to suggest these little baby hairs, those kind of angel hairs right there. That's going to add a lot of different type of energy and character to the drawing. So if I took that out and we looked at this face of this woman, then it looks one way. Then we add the hair in, it looks another way. But when we add these little baby hairs, that suggests some things about this woman. Now we kind of see it in a different light. I always like to just play around with stuff. This woman was wearing like some sort of dress, some sort of long skirt. And this person was probably just sitting down on the bus. And this guy is reading his newspaper. And this person is listening to her headphones. Again, the hair. I was a little bit, looks like I was a little bit rushing a little bit. Either I was rushing or this hair is longer. I think this hair is longer on this drawing. And sometimes I move faster on drawings because, I may get the sense that this person is going to get off the train or the bus really quick. Or I don't know if they were on a train, the bus, or the cafe, particularly in this drawing. But, I would say that a lot of times I will speed up the drawing if I get the sense that a person is going to leave soon. Other times when it looks like they just sat down and they're waiting for somebody, or, looks like they're waiting for their dinner. If you know that they haven't got their food yet, then you have a long time to draw this person, right? So one thing I do like on this entire page is this hair. I really did capture the pattern of this hair. So with this hair coming here, doing these motions coming this way, but making them all kind of line up around this area here, that's what gives you the sense that the hair is kind of like wavy, right? It gives you that wavy sense. So the same thing here. It starts up here, comes down, and then all of these different strands, they all fall along this line here. And then so it comes down this way towards the left, it loops towards the left, but then it comes down this way and starts curving towards the right. So you get that swoop this way, and then you get the swoop this way, swoop this way, swoop that way. So curving the hair in different directions definitely helps the illusion that you're actually drawing hair and taking the time to do these individual strands. Now, when I'm doing something like this, I'm literally hyper focused on this area. I'm not thinking about any other area of the drawing, right? Also, in this one, I was practicing glasses. I don't think I did that good on these glasses because the top part, for some reason, I don't really like as much. They look kind of flat. They look like they're like pushed into his face. Whereas this part, and the bottom part, I think are fine, but something about this area up here I don't like. I also wanted to show this woman here. She looks absolutely great. I like the lines that I used on her because they're very flowy, right? So let me show you. These lines are very flowing all around. You know what I mean? So I did that on her. It might have been the energy of the way she looked. It might have been because she was older. A lot of times I'll use different line quality with different people. This guy here, I think he's really cool, obviously because of the contrast. And not only did I darken in this area, I darkened it in with lines, like kind of like doodle lines. And I left the white parts showing where I could have darkened it in, kind of like this here. I wanted there to be a little bit of texture in there, reminding me of like those old school illustrations from like the 50s and, you know, the 40s. Here I'm experimenting around with paint, and this is a technique that I actually talked about in another video where I talk about how I varnish the paper first before I put the paint down. In this one, I did the same thing here. So that's why a lot of these strokes look wet, even though this is acrylic paint. You still see the texture of the strokes because there was like a, you know, varnish, acrylic varnish is really plastic. You know how ladies go get their nails done, they say, I'm going to get acrylics, right? Well, it's really just plastic. So you're putting a thin layer of plastic down on the paper, a clear see-through transparent layer of plastic, and then you're applying your paint and letting that dry. So when you put your paint over that layer, it's going to appear, it's going to make the everything look like it's still wet. So this has the quality of it still being wet. You actually see these drips and everything looks just as it did when it was wet. So I use gouache over here, and I use some acrylic paint here. And also adding some text over here because, again, back then I was doing a lot of digital work. And so I wanted to try to see if I could mimic the digital quality, but doing it in a 2D fashion. This is one of my favorite drawings because I like bicycles. I love drawing bicycles. I actually believe that I captured this really, really well. The mechanics of this bike, the handlebars, the brake levers, the seat post, even the brake calipers in the back. And also adding a little bit of smudging here just to give just an impression that there's some roundness to these tubes and to these handlebars. And just, you know, just a little bit of shadow here, not going too crazy. The most shadow is actually right here. And that's because I wanted this to really pop out at you so it wouldn't feel like this shape was a part of this guy. And so what I did is I just took the ink of the pen and just really mashed my finger into it. A lot of times at the end of these drawings, my fingerprints are almost worn off because I'm doing so much smudging right here and just taking my finger and just really rubbing it into the paper. I like these glasses. I was getting better at drawing glasses. So it's funny how you could see the progression of things versus this picture here where I didn't really like it that much. I guess I learned some from some of my mistakes there and I applied them here and it actually worked out. I also like how I threw his hair across. His hair was thrown over to the side, combed over to the side, and that effect really worked out well. I do also like this this pinky finger right here. It's just so delicate. It's so special. I don't know what to say about it, but it just is really nice. Also, this muscle of the forearm. It's funny how certain shapes, people, you know, cling to certain shapes and forms. I tend to like these types of forms, and I like looking at hands in drawings. I try to add hands in wherever I can because it's something about the hand that gives you a little bit more of expression of the person that you're drawing or taking a picture of. This, I believe I did a YouTube video about this picture. If I remember correctly, I may have done a YouTube video. I will link it in this video if I find it. But I do remember I was on the BART and I was sitting down and these people were standing up over me and they were all packed in. This was rush hour. Everybody's getting off work and there were people just packed in like sardines on this picture. But what I like most about this particular image is I love the way that I did this lady's face. I also didn't add the pupils in, so she does have that kind of ghost element type feel to it. And, because I like, fictional stuff, characters and things, I'm always kind of playing around with that. Same here. But you know what? Also, aside from the fictional stuff, this reminds me of those old school statues by people like Rodin and, a lot of the old master statues, they would typically not put the pupils. And so this sort of reminds me of that. They're built like those statues made in white stone, right? And also just adding some little texture and some little detail here with these eyebrows. Just a little bit of detail, right? Nowhere else do you have that level of detail but the eyebrows, right? Just kind of on the fly in the moment, choosing where I'm going to add detail and where I'm not going to add detail. I also really love these glasses. They're almost like pilot goggles, like those old school goggles that pilots used to wear. But she had some big glasses. She had them on top of her head, and the arm of the glass is going behind her ear. You can see her ear peeking out from there. I also play around with, learned over time not to draw the entire nose. Like I could have drew the shaft of her nose, but rather than do that, I just drew the bottom part, right? And I found that it works well in a lot of cases because sometimes when I draw this shaft here, it'll bring the eye's attention to that area. Whereas you want the whole face to be the focal point. You don't necessarily want people looking right here, right? And so when drawing people, you have to really determine where am I going to add the detail, where am I not going to add the detail? Because a person may like, it looks like she had some subtle bags under her eyes. Now, if I had to drew the other bag, then it would bring too much attention to that and make her look way older than she did. So I had to make a judgment call. I'm going to not add all of that detail under her eyes. I like this guy's mustache here. This is pretty cool. And also the texture of his plaid shirt. Just adding that in there. And this guy here, I didn't even see his full face, which was pretty cool, but I did get that hand in there, right? So that, because we don't have the rest of his face here, so imagine if we just had this, it feels one way, but it feels a totally different way because I added his hand. So we get a little bit more of his expression in here. This guy is really cool because I added a lot of shadows in here. And these glasses are getting better. You could just see the progression of my ability to draw glasses around 2013. So there's the 1-3 right here. And I really also like drawing this guy because he had this, he had very long hair, this big poof back here. So I was trying to capture that. And I really do like the shape of the muscles of his arms as well, right here. Decided to do a little bit of note taking right here. I'm not sure what I was talking about, but there was something I was thinking about at the time. Just decided to drop that in there, and then drawing this guy in here. His eyelashes, this guy's eyelashes really do add a lot to this drawing. In this drawing, I took a risk and drew the helmet of the person. And I say took a risk because helmets are somewhat intricate. They have a lot of little details. And I knew that I remember this. I knew this person was going to be getting off very soon. How you know they're going to get off soon is that they're always looking up, looking for the stop, and kind of gesturing like they're about to get out of their seat, but then they don't. That means, within the next couple stops, they're going to get off. And so I remember taking the chance to just draw this helmet pretty fast. Looks like a little person peeking in through the side there. This was definitely on a train because here are the train doors here. Little levers to open the doors. And I don't know if I was riding my bike or if I was drawing someone else's bike. I probably was drawing someone else's bike. These are the handlebars here. This is the stem. This is the fork and the wheel. But there's a hand here, and I wouldn't have been able to see my own hand turn that way. So I believe I was drawing someone else's bike. And then I was sitting behind this guy and drawing him from the back. It's funny that I drew not only him from the back, but I also drew the railing on the seat and the little screw that screws the railing into the seat. So just capturing different details. You never know what detail you're going to capture. And also the texture of his hair. Instead of going into the hair and drawing texture like I draw in other drawings, I just did the outline of the texture. And it does add a lot to let you know that this is hair here. Also, another one of my secrets is adding little dots that suggests skin or stubble. Like when a person has a beard or a mustache and they shave it down really low, you'll see stubble. So this could be that, or it could just be skin, because sometimes I'll do that for skin. And if you notice here, I added detail to this hat. So I actually captured the stitch of this, the stitch pattern of this hat. This is not the easiest thing to do, and this is one of the things that I do when I'm deep into a drawing session. Maybe I did a couple drawings that day, and so this wasn't, I know this wasn't my first drawing of the day, and I did a technique where I'm kind of pushing on the paper and pulling up. I got to get a different pen to show you this. Starting off really soft, going hard, soft, hard, soft, hard, soft, hard, soft, hard. But I was doing it faster during that session, doing it at a really fast pace, because again, you don't know when the person's going to get up. So drawing the stitch in this hat really does take home the fact that it's like a baseball cap and there's different panels on it. In this drawing on the bus, I believe I was on an AC Transit. I could just see from the design of the lines here that I was on an AC Transit. This guy is sitting in the very last seat in the back of the bus, looking out the window right here. And this is the post with the little button that you push when you want to let the driver know that your stop is next. So that's right there. And then there was another guy somewhere, I guess, in front of him reading a book. Yeah, then I had another person. I'm not sure where they were in reality. They may not have been sitting in this area, but I just decided to throw that person in there. Again, the back of pants. Now, this is something that I talked about before. I love to draw the back of jeans. I just like the way the design of jeans, the way they fall on people's legs, like how it starts up thicker here, gets thin here, and then comes out because of the calf of the leg. This is one of my favorite drawings in the entire book. And I think it's because of the outline of this person's face. So comes out, goes in, comes out, goes in, comes out, goes in, comes out, goes in, comes out, goes in. I just really love that contour. Something about the contour of this guy's face that I really like. And I also think that I did a great job with these sunglasses and playing around with the facial hair, adding this stubble on the facial hair. Now in this drawing, you could actually see how I added the varnish to the paper first. So you can see the shine of the varnish. So I varnished over this drawing, and what that does is it locks the pencil in. So if I rub on this pencil, it will not smudge at all. Now this part here, so let me go back and explain. I did draw the full drawing with pen, but then this area here, the darkened area, that's graphite, that's pencil. And so to keep that from smudging off of the paper, I had to varnish it. And so that's why I show you the shiny area of the varnish. So I just splash some varnish over it, thin layers of varnish. And what that does is it locks in the pencil so that way it won't transfer off of the paper and it won't smudge. And so I was able to get a blurry type smudge effect in the background, but then you have this clean, bright area of the paper of the drawing here and here. So it kind of pushes these letters in the background and it keeps these figures coming forward towards the camera. Drawing babies. Looks like the baby has some sort of toy or bottle, but I really do like the shape of these legs and the little feet, little tiny toes. I didn't put a face in there. Maybe it's because the baby was moving around a lot. I drew that same baby right here and the little diapers, right? But no face because babies move a lot. So a lot of times it's hard to draw a face. I do draw baby faces, but in those particular drawings, I didn't. Don't like this drawing too much. I captured only the likeness here, but I made the jaw or the chin really high. So it's kind of pushed upward. So, and then this hand is super big. But, you know, this was just a really practiced page. This may be an example of a page where I was really sidetracked. Someone may have been talking to me. I may have been, you know, there's various reasons, but and this was in 2014. So I could definitely tell that I wasn't that much into this page just by the energy of it. Now this page, I could see that I was really into this drawing session. This must be a different day, I assume, because this is black ink, this is blue ink, but look at those glasses. I'm getting better in my glasses, people. Oh my God, I love the fact that I was really progressing with my glasses around that time. And this person looks like they were coming from some sort of event where they have one of those lanyards. They had the thing around their neck, and then they have maybe some sort of name badge or something here. Living in the San Francisco Bay Area, around that time, you saw a lot of people riding the train coming from the tech industry, right? Coming from Apple, Microsoft, and all these different places, Facebook, Instagram, all of those places were in San Francisco. And so it was common to see people on the train riding with these things around their neck, or sometimes they would have it clipped to their pants. So that way, when they entered the building, they had their credentials to show that they were supposed to be in that building. This was a real, like a more of a practice page where I'm probably just playing around with different things, learning some texture stuff here, looks like. And it doesn't look like I was very into it that much. Right here, I really like this guy. And I even drew the rib or the elastic part of his beanie. I nailed that. I think that looks actually really good. And this person here, I like this drawing. As well, looks like I did some plotting and planning of the BART train itself, of the train. So this is the doors where you go into the next car, and this would be the window. And these are the signs that let you know different advertisements about what's going on within the Bay Area at that time. This was at, I believe, UC Berkeley. This was at UC Berkeley. And I do remember this day. I had my son with me that day, and we were drawing. And it was an old-fashioned building, and I really wanted to capture this architecture, but I also didn't want to do it so specific. I wanted to give it more of a, you guys know Maurice Noble. Maurice Noble is the person who did the background in the Looney Tunes drawings. I actually have one of his books. I just got it. Family member got it for me. Book is super expensive. But anyhow, Maurice Noble did Looney Tunes backgrounds, and he would always have things kind of twisted and whiny and really stylized, right? So I decided to do that here. I made the forced perspective of the building going up and inward, right? To make it look like you're looking up at a building, and it's so high up there, right? And also just kind of added this architecture in a very loose, stylized type fashion. I wanted to play around with that style there. Notice how I drew this lamppost really dark, and then the van and the trees behind it, around it, are drawn with a lighter line. that makes the lamppost pop out a little bit more closer to you. So I used to work in the San Francisco, Sonoma County, and San Mateo juvenile halls, teaching arts, teaching drawing, painting, sculpture in juvenile halls to teenagers who had made mistakes. This was around 2015. And so they won't let you obviously video or take pictures inside the juvenile hall. They won't even let your cell phone inside. So I decided to draw images and paint images of what I saw going on inside. That was the only way that I could record. So here is one of the teachers that I was teaching with. And these are the youth kind of paying attention. Looks like he was teaching about Paul Robeson at the time. That's what it says on the book. Again, I like the glasses and the hat. The hat was pretty cool. He had dreads. And I believe he had like a kente cloth type shirt on. So I captured some of that pattern here. And this was one of the guards. They called them counselors, but this was one of the guards inside of the hall. And so I painted this in watercolors, and the tables inside there had chess and checker patterns on it so they could play games on there. This was the door. These are the doors to their units or cells. And this was like the main guy. He would be up on almost like a podium type, almost like a platform where he would have access to all the switches and keys and buttons that would open these doors and things like that. So he was back in the background. So this guy, typically these guards would just sit at the tables and use their phones and kind of like, be in their own world unless they saw some sort of disruption. And then you can see in the background, there's a TV set. And then I believe there was like some books or some DVDs that were right here in the background. Now this drawing here is pretty trippy, right? So what I was trying to do, I typically try to create a lot of illusions in my drawings. So just to see how far you could push the medium of drawing, right? Because drawing is so 2D and most people just think of it as lines and shading and things. But is there a way that we can make it look like it was done in a computer? And because I did a lot of computer work, I was doing a lot of experimentation with trying to make my drawings look as if they were done in a computer, like in Photoshop or Canva or something like that, with layering things, right? So I layered this text over this carefully done drawing of myself. So around this time, I would take a little makeup mirror around with me everywhere I went. And whenever I felt like drawing and I didn't know who to draw, sometimes you just don't see anyone to draw. I would take out a mirror and draw a picture of myself. So I would hold the mirror in this hand and I would literally be drawing myself. And so that's what was going on here. And then I also added this texture to the drawing to add shading, but also just a little bit of like, I wanted it to look like vintage. I'm always fascinated with things, making things look old. This was done in 2015. Here are some more of the drawings that I did inside here. And as you can see, I was sitting behind the students or the youth as they were being taught by the instructor. So a little bit of perspective here. There were like rows of chairs. Then also, this is one of the guards. And just splashing a little bit of, add a little bit of color to it because it is a pretty dull, sterile environment, very boring environment. So I wanted to add a little bit of color to it because I thought that the art program that we brought added color to their experience inside this horrible place that they were in for making these mistakes that they made. These are some of the youth here. This was the unit 6. There were different levels, an upper level and a lower level. And on each level, there's a lot of different units that we would go in. And some days we would go in some units, other days we would go in other units. So I was in 6 and 7 on this day. Here, I'm just adding different color, same deal. Here's the doors of their dorms or their rooms that they have to go in after if they don't come out to the art program, then they had to stay inside these rooms. And a lot of times you can see this guy was like super bored. Looks like he was maybe falling asleep. Couple things here I want to point out. One is that he looks very bored. A lot of them were pretty bored because they weren't really into art that much. So, but we would kind of get them into it, and then they would have a lot of fun. So you would see it when the session typically starts. You see a lot of people with their hands on their faces, bored out of their mind. And then also I wanted to point out their slippers here. They had to wear these slides, these slippers, because they weren't allowed to wear regular shoes. I assume that's so they can't run really fast or run very far. But yeah, while they're inside the incarceration center, they had to wear these shoes where this is their socks and these are the straps that go around their, just regular like gym slippers, the kind of slippers that people wear after they play a game of basketball or something like that. This is that teacher again, teaching. And he was teaching from that same book about Paul Robeson. And then I added a little bit of logos and little texture to his shirt. And again, here's another youth looking like he's almost falling asleep. But then you see this one, he's totally paying attention. So some of them were really benefiting from our lectures and from our art programs. So I believe he was teaching about this particular figure in history from this book. And then we did an art project around that. This is another image of them. And you can see this little dude right here is just totally dialed out, like probably falling asleep. This guy's like, oh my God, why? And then you had these others who were actually paying attention. And it was really cool when they paid attention because sometimes they would ask questions and they would really be curious about the things that we were sharing with them, whether it was an art technique or whether it was a historic figure that we were talking about. Again, the doors to their cells in the background. This picture, I remember I was at a place that no longer exists in Berkeley. It was a cafe. And then at the top level, it had a, actually, no, you know what? I was at a place called Tierra Mia Cafe in downtown Oakland. I remember now. Okay. And I drew this couple. They were sitting right next to me and I drew them, but I drew them and they didn't know me. And then I also painted them a watercolor. It was so weird because I was sitting really close to them when I was making this image, but they did not see me do it. I believe I have a video of me doing this. If I have it, I will put it in this video, but they did not catch me painting and drawing them, which I found very interesting because I was literally sitting like the next table over, but this guy was totally into this girl. And you could see there was like a little ornate railing in the background here. Again, I typically do this rectangular wrap around a lot because I'm mimicking comic book panels. So like graphic novel panels, I'm always drawing these bands, these rectangular shapes around here because it reminds me of comic book panels. Drawing bikes here, I love bikes. So the way that I teach and the way that I learned is that once you learn the very fundamentals of drawing, there's a few fundamentals and it's different. I teach different than a lot of other teachers, but once you learn those fundamentals, you will be able to draw anything. That is my word. You will be able to draw anything. I've done this over and over again. This was my favorite bike back then. It was a Mazzi. It was a limited edition, and I left that bike on the train one day. is a story that I don't like telling, but anyhow, I drew my bike and it was next to the person's bike that I was training. I was training this young man in drawing, and we would go on the train a couple times a week and we would just draw people. And so this was his bike in the background and this was my bike in the foreground. These are the train doors. And as I move towards the end of this sketchbook, you start to see less and less filling up of the page. I probably got into another sketchbook around that time. Maybe it was the other sketchbook that I had made. This one here. I may have gotten into this sketchbook around that time. So that's probably why, you see less and less filling up of the pages. Messing around, just adding a little bit of acrylic paints to pop out the drawings. And I'm also drawing here in marker, which I don't do very often. I don't draw in marker very often, but I just wanted to see what it would, how it would come out. Kind of interesting to see that I drew in the pen here, but then I drew in the marker here. The reason I don't like marker is because I'm not able to capture the fine details, like these little details of the hair and things like that. The tip of the marker is so thick that I feel like I need a much bigger page to actually capture all of that. Drawing with marker here. I don't really like these drawing very much. I do like the drawing of the bicycle, but again, I was testing it out to see how these drawings would come out. And this is what a sketchbook is for. It's for you to experiment. Sometimes you do things you don't like the way this marker came through the page. I don't really like the texture here. Nothing wrong with texture coming through a page, but this particular texture I don't really like. I guess it's kind of like this lady is kind of ghosted here in the background. But yeah, I just don't like the quality of these drawings, drawing with the marker, which is why I don't do it very much. And I was experimenting around with it around that time. I think this is 2013. I'm not 100% sure. And I said, next victim. I was kind of playing around because drawing different people, just saying the next person that I'm going to draw, right? This was at the place that I was mentioning earlier. So it was a cafe at the bottom, and then there was a terrace or a second level where you could go up, and then there was books on the shelves, and you could just kind of hang out and get on your computer there. You could see this person had their drink and they're on their laptop. This was in Berkeley, and that place is closed down now. I forgot the name of it, but it was a really cool place. And so I just went there periodically and drew people. And this day I was training that young man in drawing, and we were both there drawing that scene. Drawing a lady on the bus. I really like the quality of these legs, the way starts out thick, goes thin, comes out for the cab, then goes back thin. And then I also drew the seam of the pants. That adds a little bit of detail as well as drawing the type of bag she had. And the infamous zipper. I love drawing zippers and folds in fabric. So guys sitting on the bus. I believe this lady was one of my students, if I'm correct. And the reason why is because it looks like I drew her in a contour drawing. So this all is one line. Believe it or not, this is all one line. I did a contour drawing. This is actually one of the exercises that I'm going to teach people, but I'm going to teach those 10 people that I talk about at the end of this video in my special offer. So this is one of the exercise contour drawings where you put the pen down on the page and you do not lift the pen until you're entirely finished with the entire drawing. Now, on this drawing here, I actually did do some lifting up. And the reason why I know this is contour drawing is because I needed to go back. Either I needed to go from here to here, or I needed to go from here to here, but I drew a line straight through the drawing. Maybe towards the end of the drawing, I did start lifting up because right here, this does not connect to anything else. So yeah, as I'm coming towards the end of the book, there's a lot less filling up of the page. You're starting to see more notes and things going on here. And then this guy here, I experimented around with doing very subtle lines here, like these subtle lines here, very delicate lines, detailed lines to suggest his hair on his face and also the folds in the fabric. And then writing notes. A little bit of hair texture. Notes coming towards the end of the book. And there's quite a few more pages, but a lot of them just aren't filled up. So I wanted to show you this here. These are these two drawings are done by the person that I was training. It was a very young man. He was in his mid-teens, and I was training him. He literally wasn't drawing to the ability that he liked drawing when we started training. And this is, as we're riding the train, he's capturing people. Now you got to also think about the fact that the train is moving, you got bumps and all sorts of things. And that's why I like to train people who are in the city with me. I like to train them on the train and on the bus, because there's so many distractions on the train and the bus that if you can draw something on the train and the bus, then you could draw anywhere. You know, you could draw in any environment. This is actually my drawing right here. And so I may have done a demo just to show him this is what we're going to do, and then let him go at it. Notice he's drawing the hair texture, which did a great job with this hair texture here. This is his drawing. This is my drawing. So I think I did this demo here. And I actually know this woman. I think I videotaped myself drawing this woman. And so I drew this here as a demo, and then he went at it drawing another person. These are our bikes. He drew these bikes. He did a great job. This was his first time drawing bikes. And I was really impressed because he kind of, took on all the different components of the bikes, from the brakes to the handlebars, the seat post and the seats. And then you have the wheels. Now, the lines are pretty wonky, but you got to remember, he was early on in his training. This was 2015. Here is a drawing that I did in pencil of a figure model. And coming towards the end, maybe somebody waiting at the train station. Another person just sitting around. I'm not sure. I think they were at the train station, maybe waiting on the platform, waiting on the train. But these two guys, I went to a get-together with the next door neighbor recently, and I drew some of the guys at the function. This guy actually lives next door to me, and this was a guy that I met at the function. This was in 2024, so you could tell this was very recent. So sometimes I take an old sketchbook. Most of these drawings are from like 2013 or something like this, and then depending on, the situation, if I'm going somewhere, I might just grab an old sketchbook and draw in it. And this was another guy from that same function. The part of this drawing that I like the most is that he had this tropical shirt on, and I drew all of the leaves on the shirt. Then gave a little bit of suggestion of facial hair. And that is pretty much it for this book. Thanks for watching to the end of this video. And now let's jump into the special offer. So I'm going to be taking on 10 people. I'm going to train 10 people in drawing. Now, I always say that there's no right way to draw, but there is a way to be able to draw anything you see. Notice I said anything very confidently. I don't care if we're talking about the Eiffel Tower, if we're talking about a tarantula, if we're talking about a construction site with 12 tractors and things like that. A lot of that stuff can seem very complicated, and people will say, well, my art teacher taught me how to draw a portrait of my daughter, or my art teacher taught me how to draw a cat, but I don't know how to draw a tractor, and much less 12 tractors with a crane and all sorts of things in the background. I'm going to teach you some very basic principles that will help you be able to draw anything you see with a ballpoint pen or with any kind of pen. No eraser, no corrections. This is my word, and I'm only taking on 10 people. 10. That means you might click that link and the offer is closed. Now, I do have an online course where you could go at your own pace, but this offer is only for 10 people. Okay. So if you're having that thought in your head, like, wonder what this is about, jump in while you can. I've made it very affordable, so don't worry about the price. Price should not be an issue because I've taken the price all the way down as low as I can so that people who really are interested can partake in this offer. I'm doing this for two reasons. One is because I want to show my viewers on YouTube and the rest of the internet my ability to take a person from where they are, and I get a lot of clients who can only draw happy faces and stick figures, to being able to draw anything they want very confidently with a pen and no eraser. And I want to share that here on YouTube. So that's why I'm taking on 10 people. The price is super low. The time commitment is very minimal, and you will get the results. Now, the only thing I ask is that those 10 people, as many of them as possible, would allow me to share their results here on YouTube. I may not share your name, I may not share your face, but I would like to share your results because everybody's going to want to see, I wonder what happened to those 10 people that he made that offer. I'm going to share all of it. Don't worry about it. So 10 people, click the link in the description, get joined in. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.